Hi, friends. It's Caitlin with Goodish and Growing Chats, and I am grateful you're here. Major Man and I are back in the studio in my closet. For those of you that are just listening, you can't see, but we have a new background, and um, it is a really, I guess, feels like a very special piece of art that I got from Society 6, but it's a Morgan Harper Nichols piece with a big ocean wave that says one wave at a time. And that feels so relevant right now and potentially always, that what may be best is to focus on life as just one wave at a time. I keep saying to my mom, I'm just taking it one day at a time, Mom. And she understands. She's doing the same thing. So I hope you appreciate, or I guess enjoy if you're watching, this nice new background. I feel grateful to have it. And if you don't know Morgan Harper Nichols, they are a creative, an artist, an activist, and a person that I really admire and just have turned to their art and any type of podcast that they've been on, or anything I can get my hands on, their music. Just really when I want to feel grounded and soothed. So I highly recommend, if you haven't checked Morgan Harper Nichols out, to do so. We are going to get started. So we've been in this series where we are focusing on pregnancy loss. And in one thing about me is I tend to really reflect on how I'm showing up and or what I'm putting out into the world, into the space. And one thing that I'm noticing is maybe this series, while I'm creating it, making it rather, through the lens of supporting someone that's experiencing pregnancy loss, there's always the chance that this is landing with you if you are in a different season of loss. So I just want to say that if you potentially are in a different season of your life, or you haven't had that experience, thankfully, maybe this series in this episode will still connect for you or land with you and support you in some way. And that's really what I'm here to do, is hopefully offer just similar to what I shared about when I seek out Morgan Harper Nichols to feel grounded and soothed. I hope that there's an opportunity that I can do that, even just for one person who's listening and or watching. So today we are going to really kind of hone in and focus in on grief in particular. And I would say that in my last 3 years of life, I have gotten to know grief in such a very different way than previous years of my life. Certainly had experienced grief and the loss of family members and friends, and throughout my childhood and teenage years and then young 20s. And that type of grief felt so complex to navigate and hold, and also felt different, maybe because I was experiencing that grief in a more shared experience. So there were others in my life very close to me that were also feeling such deep seasons of grief after losing the loved ones that I've lost in my life. So while I certainly have experienced grief in my life, the last 3 years has felt like a very unique type of grief to be experiencing. However, grief is grief. There are different types, as we talked about in the last episode, disenfranchised grief, with just a little bit of a high level explanation of what that is through the work of Brené Brown. But we're going to talk about grief. Big, deep breath. And throughout this chapter of my life, and as I'm growing wiser, one thing that I have taken also from Brené Brown is this idea around, and I think others probably share this strategy too when facing life situations, but just imagining yourself. She describes in I want to say it is Braving the Wilderness. She starts it out about pulling people to the table when she's experiencing different life circumstances, metaphorically speaking, that she really admires and trusts and values their perspective. So some of the individuals that she shares that she brings to her table would be able to provide her with wisdom and compassion and love and guidance in those circumstances. So I've really leveraged that idea as I've navigated grief primarily and challenge in this last few years. And I'm noticing right now, I'm going to pause, and I'm noticing that I'm feeling just a little overwhelmed right now in this moment. And I want to just share that. I want to just compassionately meet this feeling of overwhelm and notice the kind of maybe pressure I'm putting on myself to say a certain thing or phrase. And I'm going to release or just accept that that's where I am right now. Before going any further and talking more about the people that I bring to the table, I maybe what I need to honor right now is that it has been exactly 1 year since my third pregnancy loss, and that was the last one that I experienced. So I know that, you keep dates in your head, but I also read a devotional every morning. I write little notes in it. So at this point last year, the little note that I reread this morning from last year was just around the agonizing sorrow I was feeling, knowing for certain that the third pregnancy had ended. And then maybe that's what's coming up for me right now, that I'll just lean into vulnerability here and kind of take a curveball, but recognizing then how much was happening at this point last year at this time, and maybe just being in a space today where I'm reflecting on where I am now. And I'm not going to claim like, oh, how far I've come, because I don't find that helpful for myself, and it may not be helpful for listeners to be focused on an arrival place, if you will. So I'm still very much in the messy middle, and maybe it's just the messiness of life, but a lot of healing has happened in the last 365 days since that experience. And a lot of heartache has happened too. So both things can be true. Oh, so now that I've presenced and shared that, I'm going to pull my compassionate, wise advocates and icons to the table. So through this season of life, those that I imagine sitting down with me that really aren't sitting down with me are Dr. Brené Brown, Alex Elle. If you don't know Alex Elle, please look her up. Her work on healing and self-discovery is transformative, and it has been so helpful to me, truly so helpful to me. So definitely, once you're done listening, look up Alex Elle and follow her on all social channels. She has some great books on healing. I imagine Alex being there with me. And Marisa Renee Lee, who wrote Grief is Love, her work on grief and sharing her experiences with grief in the loss of her mother and also with miscarriage, pregnancy loss, navigating the journey to be a mother has been really helpful to me and supportive during this time. So I would recommend looking more into Marisa Renee Lee's work, and trying to find some podcasts with her on it. I also pull to the table Dr. Susan David, who has done incredible work around emotional agility and toxic positivity and grief. So I'm really going to focus in today on some of the learnings that I've gathered and hold on to from Dr. Susan David. So I invite you to the table with us as we spend a few moments here talking about our grief. I realize I was long-winded there in the beginning, and it's just the way today is shaping up. But one thing I want to pull into the table, bring up at the table, is recognizing and accepting your grief, that it is a representation of the love that you had. I've learned so much through my own experience of just how my grief is very much a clear directive about how much love I felt towards my pregnancy and the idea of each of our babies coming into our life, and the love that I just felt right from the start, and this love that I really allowed myself to feel each time, thinking about the future, as scary as that was. And then once the loss happened, it's like that love doesn't know where to go. Susan describes it as being untethered, and that was a word that I heard her reference shortly after my first loss, about grief being untethered love, and it just struck me in a way that I felt so connected to that term, that phrase, what I imagined that looking like, this untethered love, just kind of out there, wondering where it belongs. And there's so much heartache in that. And there's also what I am choosing to see so much beauty. My goodness. So much beauty in being able to feel so much love. It's really, really a remarkable experience. Whew. And something about kind of holding my grief and holding, hopefully, your grief, knowing that it is and will always be the love that you felt and feel towards your expected baby helps me hold it in just honestly a more peaceful way, I guess is the way I would describe it. It helps me kind of welcome the grief and not push it away when I think about it through that lens. So I offer that to you when you are navigating grief, that it really is a depiction of how much you loved, how much you love in general towards the person or the pregnancy that you lost. Dr. Susan David says too that emotions are kind of like, she referenced them as data points. They are almost signals to us about really what our values are. And one thing I've connected with there is that the grief and sorrow that I feel really has pointed me towards how important the value of family is to me. And it's supported me in recognizing that that's a large part of who I am, is this strong value of family. So I share that in addition to grief and love being so intricately connected, in hopes that on your journey, where you are right now, or where you will be in tomorrow, or in a few days, or weeks, or months from now, that you are able to. I'm grateful for my reminder behind me, but you are able to take the feeling, the emotion, if it's grief, the grief, and you are able to face it just one wave at a time. And you're able to hold it one wave at a time and recognize what that emotion and that feeling is really telling you about yourself and your values, and give yourself the compassion and grace and self-love to care for yourself as you really just continue to sit at the table with all that comes after loss. The last thing I will share here is that I've learned that prior to the last 3 years, I had this idea in my head that we move on from grief. And it's like, it's kind of a chapter book that you close and you put away. And I think that's probably a societal pressure that many cultures unconsciously or consciously push. And I think it's very prevalent in American culture to box up your grief and move on. But what I have learned is that we move forward with our grief. So our grief stays with us, and that's not a bad thing at all. And you learn that your grief will feel different. It will show up differently throughout the seasons of your life, but it is always going to be part of you. And I believe that's because it is so intricately connected to love. So I offer you an invitation here as we close out this episode, to Inhale and exhale to feel your grief. And to know that your grief is simply, I guess simply isn't, is complexly the untethered love, just really looking for its home. And that home is the person that you lost. And in this case, for the purpose of our series, this is about your pregnancy that you lost, your baby that you lost, and your grief as you welcome it here and now is that love you felt. And as you move forward, do just that. Move forward. Do not move on or put the pressure to yourself to move on without it. Allow it to transition and transform and be with you where you are. On a day like today, for me, I didn't realize even that my grief was going to come up so powerfully in sharing. And I hope what I was able to show or share is that that is going to happen. And here, now I am on the other side of that about 10 minutes later. This is a longer episode. And the grief is still there. And I'm still here too. And we will move forward. As always, I am here for you. I want to hold space continually for anyone that is experiencing hard circumstances, loss, heartache, a chapter of rebuilding. Please do not hesitate to reach out at hello@goodishandgrowing.com or connect with me on social media at the Instagram handle at goodishandgrowing.com. Everything will be linked in the episode information. And it would bring me so much just gratitude if you know someone that you feel like this episode or the sharings that I've provided thus far could be a space of soothing and grounding for them, if you would go ahead and share this episode or this series with them. So I will be rooting for you always and am going to keep on with this journey with you in all the days that come. And we will close out our series on pregnancy loss next episode, and we will be moving on we'll be moving forward rather. Okay, y'all. It's Caitlin with Goodish and Growing Chats, and I'm so grateful you were here.